insurance. I was outside of the room, so I didn't hear the quotes on insurance, but the information that I did receive on insurance varied based on whether they were organized and controlled events or whether they were unorganized, uncontrolled events. So if you consider voting on this, just call your local insurance agent and say, I need by Friday $1 million policy, and we're just going to ride south, and then we're going to go east out of Dallas County, and they'll just say that's difficult to underwrite, and the quotes they'll give you will be along that $1,500 to $3,000 for a casual ride of 50 riders or more. I think the central point that you really need to address is, if you look at the findings, they start out looking at addressing a rag ride type event. If you've got lots of people riding through Dallas County, you want to address that in a different way. But if you look at the ordinance later, it no longer defines, I think it uses the words early on, large organized bicycle events, but then later in the ordinance it talks about bicycle events, and it defines that blank, 10 to 20, I don't know what the number is, and then it says in the disjunctive, or, and it talks about advertising, which if you send out an email, that's advertising to a friend, and it talks about or an event that collects a fee. You know, that should be in the conjunctive, not the disjunctive. It should be and collects a fee. It should be something that is large, it's annual or semi-annual. It's not, hey, it's going to be a beautiful day according to WHO on Wednesday, let's jump on our bikes and ride, and it turns out that 20 friends that love beautiful weather join you. That should not be the point of the statute or the ordinance. The other thing that I think is difficult, I know you tried this at the state level, and now we're doing it from the bottom up, and the trouble with that is you get a checkerboard effect across the state of Iowa. I mean, I live in Des Moines and I practice in West Des Moines, but I'm not really conscious of when I'm in Dallas County and when I'm in Warren County and when I'm in other counties riding my bike. And I'm not saying you have an obligation to post signs, but it's pretty darn difficult to know when you're violating your ordinance and complying with somebody else's ordinance. You bring up the West Des Moines ordinance, and frankly, a lot of those ordinances that are on the books just don't get enforced. And what really comes down to is, if you want to limit your liability, insurance is not what you need. You need the waiver. And I imagine that in your counsel with your attorney, he'll say, well, you know, people aren't going to sign the waiver. We can't get them to sign the waiver. But they're not going to buy the insurance either. You're going to be faced with the problem one way or the other, but the insurance on a group like this, if we all chose to ride together today and violate an ordinance, is not the group that you want to attack. And I just don't think it's fundamentally fair that a group that doesn't collect a fee and isn't that large, that is out to have a good time, has to acquire $1 million. And the final point I'll make is this. Your ordinance does not say $1 million. It says minimum of $1 million. And so the question becomes, if you pass this ordinance, would the gentleman or lady downstairs in the office that takes the paperwork be able to say, well, this is the PIA-thon, you've got 150 riders, this really contemplated 20 riders at a minimum, so we really want a policy of $5, $10, or $15 million because, or let's say it's got some alcohol involved, which is a doubly dangerous situation, that's going to be a higher risk. Or the insurance agent says, we're going to require more insurance, that type of a thing. The ordinance does not limit it to $1 million. It says a minimum of $1 million. That leaves sort of the sky open for any amount of insurance that the county would deem appropriate for the right. The final point is this. It's just so unworkable for people like us to go out and get insurance to enjoy an activity, and no other activity in your county gets regulated or burdened like this. And there are higher, I mean, we just heard about somebody that died in a triathlon in the water. And there are plenty of events that are out of water locations that occur, and if it's 20 or 30 people, they're not regulated, and they wander into the water, and this or that happens. And I just ask you to consider the fact that there may be some motives or some feelings about bicyclists that are different than those other recreational activities, and I think the harness should be pulled back on the legislation, and this should not be adopted to affect people like this that enjoy a fun, lively sport.
I'm Janelle Redding, 110 Schrader Road, Iowa City. I know it seems funny to have someone from Johnson County here. I rode over with Mark. I want to come back to economic development and being a progressive community. I'm involved in two projects. One, I'm on the DNR's Natural Resources Commission. So DNR is opening the first ever destination resort park down in Lake Rathman. And one of the parts of that park will be trails. The other part is to go out and ride the county roads and the county highways. And DNR is in the process of building that into a promotion for that park. Come to Rathman and ride them out. And it's impossible to get very many miles in without getting out on the county roads and county highways. In Johnson County, we're undertaking a conservation bond initiative, one of the first counties to do that in Iowa. We have 99 counties in Iowa, 7 of which are growing and 92 of which are slowing. And there's a reason for that. The counties that, one, were located in urban centers, or in our case, a university, but people want to locate in areas where there's things to do, activities to do, interests, wide diversity of things to do. Unlike a lot of the people in the room, I'm not an animal cyclist. I took up cycling 3 years ago to deal with a chronic health. I don't put in the kind of miles they do.